Jeff.
Hello, everyone. Tom, Kuhn, Chun Long, Ernie, Satya. Nice to meet you all. I almost feel like I know you guys because I watched some of the replays when I was trying to make the decision to join the course. So happy to be here. This course is much more than I ever expected it to be, and I came really close to not joining it. As a trader, we talk ourselves into and out of many things, but something inside me knew that this was exactly what I needed. And I want to thank Chun Long. Watching you, hearing your questions, and seeing your courage and watching you do the work was the thing that tipped the scales and made me let me have the courage to step up and do this. So my gratitude to you. Doing this lesson, I've had so many insights. I've got pages of notes. I'm not going to bore you with those. One thing that's come up repeatedly in C202 is the realization that maybe I didn't know what I thought I did. And in its simplest form is the definition of common words like artifact. When I heard Ken first start talking about artifacts, I wasn't interested. I didn't think I needed an artifact because I only had one definition for what that meant. And then when the light bulb moment came and I thought, well, maybe there's another definition for artifact, and I realized what he was talking about, I realized I have artifacts everywhere and I value them highly for the reasons that he describes. Chaos was another word that came up. We use that word in my work all the time, chaos, as a cloud of indecision or when plans start to break. So I actually looked up the definition of it, and it's just a behavior so unpredictable as to appear random, owing to great sensitivity to small changes in conditions. And I wrote that down because I thought that applied to trading pretty much directly. A lot of people think that chaos means war, death. That's really not how I look at it. But now I have a new definition for an old word, which changes everything. Exercise one, identify moments of chaos in the day. That was a slow pitch for me because that's the life I live in my job and in what I do. We plan constantly and in great detail, knowing that the lifespan of any plan is about 15 minutes, but that's only if you wait 10 minutes to put it into effect. So by the time we are an hour into the flight, we're on plan C or Charlie Delta. You're just constantly improvising within the framework of that original plan. So there were some insights for me, and I've got a lot of notes, but that wasn't that's something that I've been trained in and I've exercised for 30 years. The active planning, trying to implement plans, realizing that they're not working and having to replan. So that's actually a skill that I think I had coming into this. And then the trader's exercise. I've done these several times before in the last 10 years. The big aha moment for me was the realization that, and I don't know why this didn't come to me 6-7 years ago when I first was introduced to Ken's work, because he uses descriptive terms that come from his military background, and he tells stories from that framework and that history. And I never made the connection, but I need to trade exactly like I fly, because that's what I'm the best at. If I'm the best at anything, it's that. And if I really think about it, how I fly is how I do everything else. So trying to be a different trader than who I really am is never going to work. So I need to focus on the commonalities between the skill sets that I use in flying and apply that to my trading. And the other aha moment was, I think this is the first time I ever completed one of these psychological type exercises and felt that it was true and honest and valuable. Before, it felt like I was making stuff up. Like when I went back and reread it, it didn't have any connection or real value. But this is the first time I've ever done it where I thought this is true and this is valuable information, and I need to be aware of it, and I need to continuously monitor it and refine it. So last week, my word was accept, to accept where I'm at and the work that needs to be done, and just to focus on that. Be careful what you wish for, because I had many opportunities to accept things last week. And during that process, I learned another new word here a few weeks ago, watching videos and in this course, and that was aho, which I think Ken defined as meaning as it should be. And so that has become my new mantra in life and in trading. When anything happens, just to mentally say aho, because this is how it is, so this is how it should be. And to take that one step further, this was always going to happen. I'm not allowed to be surprised by that, because I knew it was a real possibility from the beginning, right? So that was a big takeaway from the week. This course is so good that now I find myself wanting to know how the science behind it works, because I've never had this amount of material and progress in this short a time. So for me, it's definitely noteworthy. In the past week, one thing that resonated with me a couple of weeks ago, and I'm a slow learner, so I have to hear, Ken said something a couple of weeks ago, maybe 1 week ago. He was answering someone's question. And he said, geez, you guys have got to be tired of listening to this, because I just keep saying the same thing over and over. Well, I'm the guy that needs to hear it 5,741 times. And then on the next time, I actually get it. For the first time, I understand fully what he is saying. And so the first things first stuck with me when I started this course, and I implemented that last week by scheduling time, restructuring my week to allow for the things that I needed to do in this area. So that was to do the work in 202 and to focus on trading for the entire week as much as possible without violating my integrity and my commitments that I'd already made. So I ended up working from home all week, and my guys were looking for emotional support in the beginning, but I reassured them, I'm here, I'm not far away, call me if you need something. And it actually worked out really well. I won't be able to sustain this. I have to go back to work Monday, or they'll be looking to replace me probably. But so my next challenge is to balance that, because I've got a lot of momentum, and now I need to sustain that. So yeah, the mindset lesson was that I'm a pilot, and I always will be, and I need to learn to use that in my trading the way Ken has used his experience as a soldier and a teacher in his trading. My zero state is the test pilot mentality of being focused, slightly on the edge of my seat, and ready to act in an if then that capacity. Because on a maintenance test flight in an airplane, you hope nothing happens, but you know that it's probably the most dangerous flight that I take all year. And I'm the only guy that does maintenance test flights in our company. So I do all of them. On a maintenance test flight, you fly the airplane to all the known limits. There's a specific profile that you fly it, and you intentionally run the engine to its maximum limits. You go as fast as the airplane can possibly go. You pull as many G's as it's certified to pull. And you do all this because you want to induce a failure in that flight if it's going to happen. And we've taken prior precautions to make sure that I don't die when I do that. And knock on wood, so far it's okay. But then after I finish the flight, then it goes back into maintenance, and they re-inspect the airplane to make sure that I didn't damage it during that hard flight. And then I do another acceptance flight, which is normal. And then it goes back out on the flight line for everyone else to fly and do whatever they want to with it. And we've done all that we can do to test and make sure that airplane is safe and ready to go. So last week, or the last 2 weeks, when I committed to this course, and to trading again, recommitted to trying to be a professional trader, instead of just a hobbyist trader. I'm a take it and trade it kind of guy. So I use that test pilot mentality and got great results. I learned that I'll follow any rule as long as it works, but I have to know it. In aviation, I don't make up the rules. I have my own personal rules that I kind of layer on top of the actual rules. But the FAA rules and the government rules are not mine. They're imposed and they're monitored. And if you cross those lines, you get slapped down really quick, right? There are penalties. So I can follow rules as long as I know it and as long as it works. So I did 57 trades in 2 weeks. The first 30 trades took a week to do, and they were on a 3-minute chart. And that was the best that I'm capable of doing. I know that I can do no better right now. In the future, I can do better, but right now I couldn't do any better. But the results were so encouraging that I thought, you know what, I think I can actually do this, but now it's time for a maintenance test flight. I need to stress test this thing and see how bad it could get. So what I did is I went down from the 3-minute chart, which I was starting to get fairly comfortable with, even though the decision points come quicker, to the 1-minute chart. And the reason I did that is because I had failed miserably on my first attempt at the 1-minute chart when I was kind of testing the waters a month ago. I lasted about an hour, and I was so triggered by the huge price bars and movement that I just lost my mind. And I ended up just laughing at myself. And I was like, this is not where you need to be. So I actually just kind of got scared of it and quit. I didn't even complete the attempt. So after having a very nice string of trading where I felt like I was really doing my best and the results are not going to get any better until I do a lot more work to slowly and incrementally get better. So I was pretty happy with the whole thing. I decided, I think it was on the 2nd, March 2nd. So that was Thursday. So on Wednesday, I decided to close out all my positions to have a clear mind. And I planned on Thursday to only trade TLT, which is Treasury bonds, ETF, because it's super, super liquid and I know it really well. But I'm only going to trade that on the 1-minute chart. I'm going to go into, I didn't frame it. I didn't have any idea or assumptions of where it was going to go. I just wanted to trade it from the opening bar to the closing bar, taking each signal as they come one at a time. So I did that, and it was crazy hard. There's 390 bars on a 1-minute chart, and 8 hours of that, it was at least as hard as any flying that I've ever done. But I finished it, which was great. I reviewed my results. I have a trade log now and a trade journal, and I have screenshots of all my trades, which I never did before. I actually have a simple trading plan that exists. It'll change with time, but anyway, the amazing thing that came out of the review was that even with me driving that thing on a 1-minute chart, which I'm not good at and I'm kind of scared of, it produced a positive expectancy that day. So that tells me that this system has a very definable edge and it's robust, because with me nowhere near my best and taking trades that I wouldn't normally take, because I went from a Kata 2 long fail, and I'm like, well, now this is a Kata 2 short, I'll take that one. And I took every single identifiable trade on the chart, and it still produced a positive expectancy. That was very, very, that was important to me to understand that, this works. If I do the work, this will work. So I finished out the day yesterday, Friday, which was my roughest day ever. Came into the day thinking that I was ready to trade, planning to actually trade and not do the 1-minute chart again. But my whole world fell apart mentally. I thought I was ready, and then in about an hour in the session, I started out long Rivian, had a nice trade right off the opening bar, and my stop got hit, should have re-entered long, ended up shorting it. And for some reason, I got a short bias that I couldn't shake. And I was aware of it the whole time it was happening. Like, I should have been long bonds. On my normal trading day, I would have been long every day, everything, because I wait for weeks for those days to happen. And I will be all in long on everything, because that's the kind of trader I usually am. But I was completely shaken, stopped trading. Took about an hour and a half off at lunch, got some lunch, reset, took about 7 pages of notes, like, why can't I figure this out? And then so I came back at the end of the day with one plan, and that was all right. This happens. It's happened to me before, but it's really been like years since that actual event happened where I was just totally shaken. But I came back in and said, look, I'm going to watch. And I had this bearish part of me that was like, we've got to short this thing. And I'm watching it going up thinking, you are insane. I'm not shorting anything. So I came back into the last session planning to just watch the price action. And I had made a plan that I would take one trade on Tesla because I've traded it for years and it has a habit of sucking in everybody long and then selling off into the close. And it'll do the opposite too. So I said, okay, on a 3-minute chart, if that trade materializes and Tesla's weak, we'll take that trade and that trade only. So I took that trade. It ended up being a decent winning trade and closed everything out. But this past week, I learned more than I have in the past 2 years in 1 week because I was able and I had the luxury of just dedicating this whole week to all aspects of my trading, creating a trading plan, doing all that stuff. And the crazy thing is, my little experiment on the 1-minute chart kind of wrecked my trade log, right, and my histogram because I didn't do very good. And then Friday was a total disaster. I didn't lose a lot of money, but I lost a lot of opportunity that I would have normally and comfortably just captured the whole move or a very large part of it. But this 2-week experiment, the first week was 31 trades in a thoughtful and I think as professional as I'm capable of right now was really good. And then this last week of all these smaller trades was a learning experience. It didn't cost me anything except my time. And I remember Ken saying, and I wrote down somewhere in my notes, trading your time for knowledge is probably the best trade that you can make, but only if you put that knowledge into action later. I've had this knowledge for years. I've just never followed through and done the work to put it into action. But I ended up this 2-week trial up 15.87R, and that was following Ken's rules only on a 3-minute chart and a 1-minute chart. And typically, I'm a high time frame trader, an hour chart or above. But it was very small position sizing. At first, I thought I might paper trade it, but I know from the past that I can't paper trade. I won't actually sit and do it, especially if you have to watch daily or 3-minute bars. There's no way I would be serious. So I traded it with real money at a much smaller position size than I would normally trade, and that netted me $316 for the 2-week period. Which part of me that was what wrecked me on Friday. Is there was about half of me was just rebelling that we weren't trading for money, and the other half had committed to not trade for money, that we're just trading for experience and learning, and we have to know this system and we got to test it. And I was successful for 4 days with that first plan. And on Friday, there was some part of me that just rebelled and said, look, I've had it. You're missing out on all this money, and the learning is over. But the lucky thing is, even though it took an hour and a half, I resolved that and I recognized where it was coming from. And like I said, that's about all I got. But I learned more in the past week than I have in the past 2 years. I learned about Ken's system, but I also learned about me trading Ken's system. And that's really what I need to know. So thank you guys for listening, and aho.
As always, you guys just continue to blow me away. Let me see what we got here. Let me know when you can see that screen. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to start at the end and work my way backwards. So with Jeff, uh, participating in this course is exactly like staying in the trade. The same thing that Satya is doing is what we're contending with when we're trading our time for money in the course and saying, I'm just going to, keep plugging away at it. How many times does the sculptor tap on the stone carefully? All the time. Or the mason, he's trimming. Watch guys trimming bricks to work the corners or as master masons. The courage of doing the work and the courageous example at Shunlong, I 100% agree. There's at the bottom of that little note sheet, you see a link to a YouTube channel. It's The Artifact and the Moving of Heavy Stones. That's a guy that demonstrates how, by hand, he moves 20-ton obelisks with a pebble. He moves them from flat, rectangular blocks to a vertical position with a pebble in his hands. And then the connection to building the pyramids is a pretty powerful imagery. Chaos, the unpredictable deterministic systems. They're following rules. It's just they're so sensitive you can't predict the outcome, and it's often confused for random. But if we could know and had enough computing power, we could find. And so that's why turbulence is the best model for chaos, because it's all deterministic rules, but there's so many molecules and so many forces that it takes longer to compute it than it takes for the result to manifest. So when you try to understand your way through chaos, you're always behind. All you can do is dance through chaos or move with balance through chaos, a step in every direction at any time. How you fly is how you should trade. Yeah, that's proper. And then you want to know what the proper commonalities between the two models are. And just like you're testing the limits of an aircraft, you want to test the limits of the analogy to know goodness of fit and know where the boundary is all the time. And then you know what your safety limits are based on experience. And that's why you get paid as the maintenance test pilot. And then you notice the aha moment of recognizing what is true is valuable in the moment. And one of the things that you get from true storytelling is focused deep dives into truth telling, and you learn to hear what it sounds like from others. You learn to hear what it sounds like coming from your voice in your own ear, at the same time resonating with your heart, knows it's true when it's sending it, but then your ear is hearing it and processing it, and that closes the loop on validation or verification or acceptance of the truth, in the same way that what you said, and I'm not going to steal this, Ernie, I'm going to receive it and pass it on from this moment, because we're in that circle. It's not stealing. Stealing would be an intention. Receiving and passing it on is what we're doing. That makes all the difference. So think of the maintenance test pilot moment by design going to work at the limit of the machine for other people's lives. You want to talk about skin in the game. You're willing to put your life at risk on the edge so that others don't have to, that they can stay within the safety limits, which is well short of the mechanical limits of the airframe, because that thing's starting to break every time it moves. And even when it's not moving, it's always in the process of breaking from the last time you certified it. And you've defined the design limit and then the performance limit, and then the safety limit that other people are doing is much less than that, unless they had to And then you have some confidence that the limit of the aircraft will protect them when they find them in a place where they are beyond their own skill limits, but the airframe will take care of them. So that process for the maintenance test pilot at the limit is the test, the recertification, because you broke something in the test. So the test, the recertification, the acceptance, and the release. So test, certify, accept, and release. That's the zero state. That's exactly what Master Shi is saying when he talks about let it rain. Recognize, accept and allow, inquire, and non-identification with results. When you get to that lesson, you listen to Master Shi walking up the mountain and the process to overcome the 5 hindrances. That's a pretty powerful phrase. Test, recertify, acceptance, and then release. And you've done what you can do, professionally. I want you to notice the move from 3-minute bars, which took you some time to do being an hourly bar trader, to then and getting comfortable with that, and then testing the 1 minute, which felt like chaos, but then you were able to power through it with interesting results. You were sparring with the champ in the 1 minute round. When you're doing the 3 minutes, that's you being comfortable with shadow boxing and learning your own. And then when you get in the ring with the 1 minute with the champ, you're still surviving and robust. I want you to now investigate, how does it feel trading at 3 minutes before and after? You had a certain feeling about trading at the 3-minute rate. Then the 1 minute rate felt chaotic but doable. Then when you go back to the 3-minute rate, unless you look for it, you won't notice that the 3 minutes just got easier. It seems like there's even much more time to decide on the 3 minutes after having experience trying to decide at the 1 minute. So if you want to learn how to trade on the 3 minute, you're a 5-minute bar trader and you want to learn how to trade on the 3 minutes, go try to trade on the 1 minute, then come back to a 3 minute, and that'll seem as easy as what you learned to do on the 5 minutes, but you end up cutting your decision time by 40%. So it's that conditioned experience, and that's why you got to spar, so that when you come back to do your regular kata practicing, it's even easier. But you also recognize that you had to learn to rest and reset and recovery time after a sparring session. So you don't immediately you got to physically pay and reset in the same way that you got to have rest after overloading a muscle to give it time to rebuild. That's when the strength is coming. So the idea here is, by shifting your time frames, you end up becoming much more proficient at the time frame that you want to dedicate to production. So if you want to have production at the 3-minute time, you got to practice on the 1 minute chart and just, blow that out and then realize, okay, that's just a thing. Now when you go back to, and then after you recover from that, then you go back to the 3 minutes, even easier. On the other end, when you go from 3 minute to 30 minute, as Satya is discovering, and as I kind of showed over the last 4 or 5 weeks with that swing trading, the 30-minute buy and hold, if I can say it that way, staying in the trade, benefits from the practices that you engage in on the 3-minute. The 3-minute is also a better way to exit when it's time. When the 30-minute says, yeah, we should be really thinking about the exit, that's when you drop down to 3-minute or 10-minute or whatever. But that little shift in time frame works in the other direction too. To go, when you practice on the 3-minute, you'll be better at the 30. When you're better on the 30, you are actually free to be better on the 3-minute, because the 30-minute is protecting you, because you have carefully defined the safe limits for that trade, and now you can release the tension of trading on the 3-minute and just make decisions. So that there is a reciprocal and mutually supporting relationship in that shift of time. And skin in the game and real money and trading forward with one live share is 10 minutes of that is worth 10 months of back testing or sim testing or paper trading at some real point when it comes to wanting to put skin in the game and real money. It's nothing until you have real money in it, in my view. We know the difference between training with blanks and training with live rounds. It's 100% different. And we never forget that. So just an amazing commentary there, Jeff. And I wanted to connect that so when I snip this out, we can put that testimony, the transition, and that commentary together. Satya, the existential learning of experiencing pump and dump, that's why they call it pump and dump, and that's what it's like in unethical experience. And that's why I refuse to let people trade along with me looking over my shoulder. Not because I'm a pump and dumper, but because the locus of control must be yours, or I'm not teaching you what I'm trying to teach you. And the bar-by-bar trading and training, that's everything. That's exhausting if you're doing it right. And for Tom, planning and Mike Tyson and learning to reset after getting punched in the face, and you only get 3 minutes between rounds to reset. If a heavyweight boxer can do that after getting hit in the face by Mike Tyson, then we can do that with the market. I want you to listen to the difference between a claim and a belief and a question. The statement or the claim or the belief is you have to get into a certain mood to trade well. When you add the word do and a question mark at the end, it says, do you have to get into a certain mood to trade well? And now notice the difference that just an emphasis makes. Do you have to get into a certain mood to trade well? That's sort of a generic human statement, good for all time and space. But if I change the emphasis, I say, do you have to get into a mood to trade well? Or if I change it to the word have, do you have to? Do you have to get into a certain mood? Do you have to get into a certain mood? Do you have to get into a certain mood to trade well? That sentence has 8 different meanings. That sentence of 8 words or whatever, 10 words, 8 operational words. That sentence has 8 different meanings based on which word I stress. And if I change it from a question to a statement, it has 8 other meanings as well. So there's 16 different ways that you can interpret just that sentence. And the biggest one is the difference between a claim or a statement or a conclusion. You have to, and do you have to? So if one sentence with 8 words can have 16 different meanings that are profoundly different, how important is it the way you're hearing your own unconscious self-talk in your own head in terms of setting your mood and the next thing that you're going to do as a response to your feelings? Because there's a boundary between your feelings and your self-talk. Your feelings come up out of your experience, and then you put words to characterize and contain that feeling. So the words you choose and the way you emphasize it is a story about how you understand what that feeling means. And if there are 16 different ways that I can tell that story about that feeling that emerged, that's 16 different subtle start points for the chaos that you're about to get in, which is a deterministic, non-predictable system. Very sensitive to your start point. Your start point is the self-talk and the way you're interpreting it from the feelings that arose without your control from the biological system which released that energy so that you would recognize that there's something important going on. That's when we get the emotions. So, Jeff, you asked about the science behind all this. That's the science behind all this, is that the words and the self-talk and the bundled story of meaning is how we actually understand the world. That's actually the world we're living in, which is the world that we're living in is also living in a meta world in which physical reality are having some events which our organism, our bioorganism, is responding to, some 1% of which, if we're lucky, we're even consciously aware of. And what we're aware of are the feelings, is the first thing we notice. And then we notice that we put it into words to try to get control over it, make sense of it. And then those words cohere into a story, which we then remember and then lather, rinse, and repeat until those stories become the ways we interpret and understand and our life, and use that as guideposts to live forward. So true storytelling unpacks all that and says it's a choice on the stories you decide with intention to tell about your experiences. And unless you get in there and start sifting around and trying on different things, you are not aware of all the possible ways that you can reframe and live going forward with intention. So choose your intention wisely and learn how to use those power tools carefully. So I will say, if you listen to the interview podcast between Andrew Barry and I spent an hour talking about the connection between the Creativity 202 process from Fletcher, but also this David Boji true storytelling experience about what to do with the energy and the artifacts that come up out of there. Our stories are collections of artifacts, in the same way that that little pebble that helps the guy move a 20-ton stone and conceivably create a great pyramid by himself, give him enough stones and enough pebbles and enough time, he can recreate the Great Pyramids. It's just a matter of scale. Everything else is just management and scheduling and raw materials. The technique is the pebble. That's why a pebble in your shoe when you're road marching is everything. That thing feels as big as a Great Pyramid when when it's under your foot and you're carrying 100 pounds. For Tom, and us, for whatever role you define for yourself in your system, the question is now, are you ready to work? Or are you ready to work? Are you ready to work? Are you ready to work? And then making the claim after those questions and a quick self-check, I am ready to work. That's when you're in the zero state. I don't care how long it takes you to get there, but until you get there, you're not there. And if a heavyweight can reset in 3 minutes after getting punched in the face by Tyson, then we should be able to do that faster. How fast can you reset so you can say with complete conviction in a true storytelling statement, I am ready to work, period. That little period is the pebble that moves the 20-ton stone. So you got to say that sentence and anchor it with that period, which is a moment in time and a declaration of truth. And next, I am ready to work, period. Let's go. That's the attitude that wins. Shunlong, your results were your feelings, and you're recognizing all that. And then the question, when is good enough good enough? That's the question I ask my officers. When is the minimum standard good enough? And they better be able to say all the time to take the next step. Otherwise, the minimum standard wouldn't be the minimum standard. So when you're at the minimum standard, sometimes it's time to act instantly and put it into motion, or the next action is to refine it because of reasons. Like given the ecosystem, the next thing to do is to improve the solution, but you always know that you have the minimum standard in hand, and you never let go of that, which, by the way, is the no lose plus dinner for two. Ernie, I don't like watching myself on my own storytelling, but I do it, and that's your superpower. On planning, the Harvard Business Review story article is from 2006, stop planning and start making better decisions. And I would have reframed it by saying, stop planning so that you can make better decisions. Listen to the difference in those. stop planning and start making better decisions. That says like, oh, reject that other thing so you can do this other thing. No. Stop planning so that you can make better decisions, because you got to create time and space and conditions so that better decision making can occur. Decision making pulls you through to the next thing to do, and it requires just the right amount and just enough information to do that, whereas planning tries to understand everything. A focus on better decision making recognizes that I pull information to me set up by the plan and preparation so that I can execute better decisions. The decision is the moment, and it pulls forward all that prep, which is why, Jeff, when you realize, hey, and Kyun, trying to find the mover when I haven't prepared to do that. How good is that idea? There's better ideas than that, and we don't even have to prove that any further. That's why preparation is everything, and anticipation and rehearsal. And Ernie, reframe stealing. We're not stealing the ideas of other unless that's your intention, which is your choice. But if you think about family-style dim sum Chinese eating, there's a family bowl of food, and we pass it around, and we take what we need, and we pass it on gratefully to others, and then we do something with that gratitude from the food. The nourishment and the strength that represents gives us the ability to give back in other domains. So that ain't stealing food, unless you're stealing food. So get rid of that word, unless that's what you mean. I'll tell another whole story. I got an hour-long story about Alcoa and the characters on the shop floor who taught me in a machine shop making original equipment parts for braking systems for automobiles and trucks about just making a living by making things. I was a little shop monkey, and my job was to turn a piece of pipe into a piece of pipe with a 30-degree bend on it without ruining the part and the raw material and wasting time, which meant there's a whole bunch of other guys that had to design the part to a spec, prototype it, make the machine that was going to make the part, make the machine so that a monkey like me couldn't break the machine or ruin the setup through normal operations, prove that we could make that at scale and sell it at a cost that would add value robustly for us. Oh, but by the way, to make parts that would work on a braking system in an automobile, so when a family was driving down the road and dad stepped on the brakes, it worked and saved their lives. All I had to do was make a living making things and knowing my role and knowing what my skills were, and learn from all those other guys that set all those things into position, to include the maintenance test pilot and testing the braking assembly before we shipped them to the auto manufacturer. So there's something sacred in all of that. For Ken, how good is this lesson? Lesson number 2. I didn't even know how good it was, and I wrote it. When I come back a year later and I go, gee whiz. Those questions are even better than I knew they were good at the time. I didn't realize. In the same way that I knew I was doing pretty good on the swing trading, and then I looked at the stats. Wow, now I got to overcome that. Listen to the Saturday night podcast, the opening 10 minutes, about the performance of the 3-minute, 30-minute daily swing trading in public on film for the last 5 weeks. It's ridiculous. And Ken, you're learning that not only do you got to reset between trades, but you got to reset between months and moods and seasons. You know, there's a transition between spring and summer, in addition to just resetting between jobs on the farm. And the more things there are that you see, the more things there are to fear. Yeah, that's the world we live in, but we're fearsome as well. And the market better watch out for us. We are not the descendants of fearful men. You're bringing something to the fight. What is your behavior or ritual that is the absolute confirmation that you are reset, that allows you to state with conviction and truth, I am ready to work, period? Know what that is. Yeah, we're always in the testing phase. As you said, that's the Edison model. 10,000 times to find the light bulb, okay? And then that light bulb scales. What was the value loss? The value loss would have been not continuing. And then that led into the test pile. Holy smokes. Yeah, FOMO and FOG-B, fear of giving back. And let me tell you about Woj and his examples and the 4 charts. You see him trading the same 4 things every day, just cranks it out, win or lose, doesn't matter, cranks it out. That's after 3,000 trades. If you went back and looked at his first 500 trades, you would be, a despair would be one of the legitimate responses. That dude was making a lot of sawdust with the WMB3 and just taking 40 and 50 trades on one symbol until he's just kind of refined. So you got that out of his system, and now his system is what he's doing, and he's in production. So that's inspirational. So let me just wind up by saying, my work in progress is the Saturday night review of the swing trade work over the last 5 weeks, plus that hour-long podcast with Andrew Berry that I made a posting on. He did a wonderful job as an interviewer and the show notes. And when I went back and listened to it, I learned about things that, as I was saying them in this stream of consciousness, that I wasn't even fully aware of as I was talking. And that's kind of what happens with true storytelling. That's also the science behind it for Jeff, is going back and reviewing and listening like Ernie does to discover those things and start going down those different rabbit holes. Rabbit holes is where rabbits live and grow other rabbits. So that's not a dead end. A rabbit hole's not a dead end, unless he doesn't have an escape hatch out of there when the snake comes down, and that's part of the cycle of life. So be prepared. All right, so that's everything I wanted to say there. I got to get ready to go eat some dim sum with the girls. Came home, so we're going to go eat some dim sum. And as the little wheel brings the food around, I'll be thinking about this moment. So amazing session. Well done, fellas. Jeff, there's about a year's worth of work in the last 30 minutes, which is nice. We have an abundance of raw material. And always remember that the master carpenter doesn't have scrap wood in his shop. What he has is wood that he hasn't had a purpose for yet. There's no scrap wood. Who do you think you are describing wood as scrap? That says everything about you and nothing about the wood. There's no scrap wood in the wood shop. There's just wood and tools and people and intention and practice.